and is important because the more the user participate, the more the rewards go up, and the more the system is secure, and then the more user participate, etc., etc. But the problem is also that there is this kind of, let's say, reversal of the virtual cycle, which, if the slides work, which is that the less user participate for some reason, like there's unfairness, the less the system is secure, and the less user participate. So it is a bit of a cynical remark that has been made probably by Satoshi himself, the fact that this system is going to get at steady state in a stable configuration. Either it's disappeared or it's working. So basically you do something and you just see what happens. In any ways it's going to happen by following the rules that have been set at the beginning. But many of the things that we are seeing now in Bitcoin are not really anywhere close to the spirit of the beginnings because of like shifting assumptions, like the fact that mining has become like a professional activity, and then only countries where the electricity is cheap enough can do that. So it's basically all China which is mining, and the rest of the world is just transacting. And this also means that there is this kind of imbalance between the interest of a user and the interest of the miners, which in a way has reflection on the kind of fact that there are transactions that can stay forever there in the system and never get approved, and you never know whether you can like reissue them or like should you increase the fee just to see that the transaction before has been approved at last, and that's the best case probably because you would have paid more. But yeah, it's just a big mystery which doesn't really help user participation in the long run. So, well, I think to broaden a bit the subject, when you speak about incentives, there's at least 3 choices that have to be made. What to reward, and now we have a system that rewards mining, basically, and all the rest is kind of left to the goodwill of the miners for like user-facing behavior, which is like, will it pass, will it not pass? Will it get approved fast or like left there for hours? But there are other things which are more ingrained with like the system. So verification, for instance, which all the nodes, even those who are not mining, do, is not rewarded. You just have to verify that the laws are applied, but then you get rewarded only if you mine, whereas verification is kind of happening everywhere at every node, so that is not rewarded. There are proposals like a proof of stake, which would reward the fact that people own a stake in the system. So basically they have coins, and that means that people who own more coins will have more rewards. And they say, well, but more rewards means that like the monetary mass is growing like uniformly with this lottery over time. So, but is just ownership of coins something good? Like, do we want to basically reward people for not spending their money? And that's kind of complicated. Like, and if you want to encourage the spending, but we are kind of charging people fees for doing that, so it is quite a tangled question. Then there is the how to reward it. Like, there is the 2 basic means of reward, which is the creation of the coins, like the block reward, which in the stated, let's say, goals of the people who created the system with very kind of conservative economic beliefs and like very mainstream, it was necessary to shut it off like over time, because otherwise there would be a growing number of coins, and that means that coins will be kind of worthless at the end because of the naive thought that the more coins existing means that devaluations and inflation kicks in, etc., etc. But this is an economy or not? Well, I don't really know whether that's the case, and therefore the probable reasons for stopping the creation of coins progressively is very ideological and not very either practical or like economical. Collecting transaction fees is something which is seen as justified because, well, fees should be like fueling the systems, and the fact that people spend effort to do like all this work that is mining, whether it is like with proof of work, which is particularly expensive, but other, let's say, I suppose, ways to pay for the actual shared infrastructure should be probably inserted in the system. And like latest proposals following the paper that you pointed at have suggested that introducing delayed rewards in the system, so basically not instantaneously rewarding the mining of a block or other things, could be a key towards kind of, let's say, promoting good behavior by the players, which is not really, let's say, amenable to kind of manipulation on the short term. And then how much to reward is also quite an interesting topic. Like today we have a reward which is basically given out in coins, and coins have a value which is very variable. Could have been like 30 cents like 4 years ago or 5. I'm getting older, so I forget. But now it's like thousands of dollars. So like the fixed fees and the absolute value of fees is actually there. May change radically over the lifetime of the system. So, and then there is never really a feeling about what does it cost to operate a blockchain. So basically, when it was small, perhaps the fee was appropriate. Now, I suppose in the last few years, there has been a large incentive for new people to start mining and to basically buy hardware that would just to do hashing for the fact that like probably what they were spending was like 1/10 or 1/5 to compared to what they were like actually extracting in terms of value from selling the money that the coins that they were generating. So in a sense, I have started working on this some time ago, like that was 2014, but I was alone and it was not high priority on my list. And I am quite interested because your analysis starts from like completely different perspectives and premises, and like we have actually an idea about the fact that time is important in so we have now developed a payment system. I wouldn't call it cryptocurrency because it's kind of a murky concept, but an idea that a system with a blockchain could be thought as a payment system, which means that we do not guarantee that the values are going to stay stable over time. We have values of all transactions that decrease over time, like with some sort of constant devaluation. And we use that phenomenon to enforce transaction fees because naturally the currency is like losing value over time. And with this system, we have two things. Transaction fees are now used to set a limit of validity for transactions over time, because if you let a fee which is like X%, that means that in n blocks plus 1, the fee will not be sufficient for the transaction to be valid, and therefore you get a cutoff. Either it passed or it won't pass. And therefore you get some sort of incentive to basically give a proper fee in order of your expectation of the time you want to wait for the fee. So conditionality of mining reward and the activity of the system through external like entities that give let's say a reward to the miners for providing like what coins have been mined back to the system, like loaning money to other people who borrow it, and then you get paid based on what has been the money lost to demurrage during like the use that people have done of. So it is quite interesting what you can do, but it's quite interesting also the fact that most of the conclusions by people who are working on incentives are kind of similar in the way that time is important, and in the way that all rewards should be kind of delayed and applied over time. So it's quite interesting.
More or less the same conclusion.
Yeah.
What you are using? So just
we picked up
simulation?
Bitcoin.
No, in the sense of when you study the space, theory, which kind of
I'm a very practical person, so I don't really consider it. I just build the system and then I let it to the mathematicians to work it out. So, and I'm actually looking for mathematicians at the moment. We have something which we started with Tijani Shahed at IMT. So basically it's more into, let's say, studying the story of the system and characterizing the behavior of, let's say, all the variables. You were looking at the fees. There's been another paper which is kind of interesting and which came out in a unlikely venue, like was it sociology or whatever. It was about trends, tips and tools in Bitcoin fees. Basically, they were analyzing the impact of, let's say, events that they could retrace in the history of the system on the behavior of clients, and basically they observed several things, among which the fact that whatever the software does, users are pretty happy to follow. So basically the fact that the fee has been updated in, let's say, Bitcoin nodes meant that suddenly like a different proportion of fees was being applied by clients. It's less rational, perhaps. It's more normative. That is one of the conclusions. Then they have also studied the expected time with respect to the fee for having an approval of the transaction, and they saw that whereas giving a little fee helps a lot, because if you don't put any fee, you wait a long time. Increasing the fee doesn't really give you a payoff. So that's quite an interesting study that I will be glad to point you to if you haven't seen it. Yeah. So in a sense, it's a rational system. There's game theory involved, and like many of the papers were about exploiting this kind of arbitration opportunity. So like one conclusion of the paper about like a block reward makes Bitcoin stable, and like the lack of block reward may make it unstable, is that making the system more predictable could be also helpful to avoid this kind of arbitrations. So basically, one arbitration is the duration of the block is kind of a random variable, which could be like on average 10 minutes, but it could be like 1 minute, like it could be 20. So the attack on the block creation by selfish miners is rightly on that phenomenon. So basically, if you take 1 minute, you can start mining the next one, and when you see that people are starting to diffuse, you can push it out and like try to preempt. And the attack on the composition of the block means that you can pick some transactions to make a block quick, and then give others to incent them to work on your block instead of the fuller block. So all these things are kind of predicated on the lack of knowledge of timing. So perhaps better things than proof of work could be studied to make block creation more regular, and that would be also stabilizing force. But I mean, I liked your presentation, and I would like to speak more about it. So I started with like my work, and this was basically the plan for the next hour, and I think we can probably remove the video so people feel more relaxed and we don't have So if you want to start presenting what you're doing individually, you people still in the room, the floor is yours. So with this we close the video. Thanks. Merci, c'est fini pour la vidéo.